Hi, welcome to my channel. I'm Janet Yong, and in my channel I share about feng shui, Bazi, entrepreneurship as well as personal growth in the areas of motivation, communication and success. In last week's video, I shared about utilizing Bazi to understand ourselves, our intrinsic characteristics for motivation and personal growth. When we do the things that we do you think it's just intrinsic personality or is there something more? I took a journey to interview more than 100 leaders for both my Effective Asian Leadership book as well as the Leadership Online Summit series last year to find out more. So in the next segment, I'd like to share with you my findings. So as all of you know, I'm a feng shui and Bazi consultant as well as an author and speaker. And in the writing of my books, I wrote the Being Happy and Successful series, and the latest book that I released is the Effective Asian Leadership, where I interviewed more than 100 leaders across Asia. Now, why did I do this particular book? Because I believe that besides understanding ourselves through our personality, our intrinsic characteristics, motivations and passion, I wanted to also investigate why do people behave the way they do without necessarily just looking at it and understanding their personality. So in this book itself, then I dive really deep. I wanted to understand why were there successful leaders across generations. I didn't want to do another leadership book on the effective leadership kind of styles. I really wanted to understand the real life, real people, why they were successful. And that's how I approached the writing. And from the findings that I'm going to share, I hope that it will help you in terms of understanding yourselves, not just from a personality perspective, but understanding yourself from the foundation of why you do things the way that you do. So for this book, I interviewed more than 100 leaders. 90 of them were experienced leaders. 25 potential and emerging leaders were surveyed. We interviewed them across 17 countries and almost 50 industries of all company sizes, as you can see from the slide of the various different logos, from multinational corporations, global corporations, regional conglomerates, individual companies, as well as entrepreneurs and solopreneurs, including that of NGOs. Basically, all successful individuals, why they were successful, and not just from a big company perspective, but across industries and spectrum. Like I mentioned earlier on, I really wanted to understand what makes an individual successful, especially from a leader perspective for this book in Asia. So there were a couple of key questions that I asked, which I urge you to ask yourself, and I'll recap it at the end of this video session, is what values influence you to be who you are today? If you are a leader or a successful entrepreneur or just an individual. Why do these values matter to you? And how have these values changed over time? How have these values influenced the culture of the organization that you lead, if you are a leader, or if you are a family head, or within the family or the business that you lead? How have these values influenced the decisions and choices that you have made as an individual? And how do you view diversity, team collaboration, or communication with others? All these are some of the questions that I ask the leaders, and I think you should also take time to reflect to understand yourself a little better. If we look at an individual, it is not just understanding the personality part of it. We also need to look at the values which shape the character of the individual or leader. Now, let me explain a little bit more. If we look at personality, we have the intrinsic personality, which is explored by many different systems, be it Bazi, which are adapted to the Asian personality profiling system, or is it if you are in a corporation, you may have done MBTI, Human Brain Dominance, Big Five personality types. And with the impending changes like I've covered in period 9 of what's going to come with COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of us need to nurture our resilience, our ability to adjust and be agile, and to be empathetic, as well as have good people skill sets in order to move forward, especially if you are handling people across countries, across region. You can't really meet them personally, and you have to actually influence remotely as well. That's the part on personality, whether is it intrinsic to you or nurtured. Now, the other part I was really keen on when I interviewed the leaders, and I would urge you to also reflect and re-examine for yourself, is what values did you develop when you were growing up that shape your character? A lot of what I found was that a lot of them were influenced by the family that they grew up in, whether they have mentors, the school and type of education that they go through, the society in terms of what is right, what is wrong, and the individual's experience. What I find is people who are successful and who tend to be more mentally and emotionally resilient are so because they have gone through a lot of challenges and obstacles, have learned to pick themselves up after they have done some reflection, so that whenever a new challenge or obstacle comes up, they are calm, they reflect, and they are able to bite the bullet and move forward. In this particular leadership framework which I utilized to write the book, therefore I re-examine the personality that I mentioned earlier on, the values that shape a person, and therefore how does this individual or leader then enact and choose in terms of their choices and communicate with people or take the right kind of decisions. As I mentioned many times previously, when we look at our heaven or what we call our Bazi or intrinsic characteristics, two persons born on the same day, same month, same year, same time may have similar intrinsic personality. However, because they grew up in different environment, have different family background, different education, different countries, and therefore maybe the choices and decisions are different and the experiences are different, it will then basically guide their decisions and choices differently, and therefore outcomes will be different. So when we look at our chart, please do understand that it is just a tool for us to understand ourselves and insight to what are the experiences that we will have. But at the end of the day, it is still up to us, which is the mankind luck, to guide ourselves in terms of decision, our choices, and action that will determine happiness and success. As mentioned previously, values are the foundation of our beliefs, and therefore one of the key reasons why we do the things that we do. So what were the top 3 values that were shared by the leaders? One was integrity. The next was discipline, hard work, commitment, and leadership by example. The third was human connection and understanding. And especially with COVID, the key portion about empathy, and like I mentioned previously, going towards period 9, where fire, purpose, passion is important. Therefore, the bit about human connection and understanding is critical, because someone born in a city and versus that of someone who is born in a countryside will have totally different values, totally different characters, although they may have the same intrinsic personality, that maybe they share the same day master or orientation. So those are some key points that you need to remember. And the other values that were shared that were important were family and faith, respect and trust, open-mindedness, and passion. And especially more open-mindedness, learning and relearning became even more important, especially when I was doing the Leadership During Crisis Online Summit series last year, when COVID-19 was really rearing its head in the region itself. It's quite interesting. I have been approached by a world organization to share on these effective Asian leadership. What did they say, and why were they interested in my research and my findings? Because the head of L&D there, when I asked, shared that a lot of leadership books talks about effective leadership styles, what's the latest, what's the most in thinking, but I was really looking at it from a deeper perspective in terms of values. So I urge all of you who's watching this video with me to really take a step back and reflect, because it's not just about understanding ourselves through one tool. We should also take a step back and ask some of these questions. What influenced your values when growing up? Why do these values matter to you? And are yours, your team's and organization's values in alignment if you are a leader? If not, then are yours, your family's, or your business or career's values in alignment? Because when we take a step back, reflect and answer these questions, it will help us to basically combine it with our personality to understand the kind of work environment and job roles that we like, and guide us in our longer term future, not just looking at the Bazi chart of what influences will come, but what sits well within us. And this is what I've been doing all these years, and that's the reason why I would like to share with you. For instance, in a recent lesson that I shared for my online course on creating multiple streams of income with my learners, I told them, when I'm re-examining my personal values and branding, I always have a little red book like this. And in it, I basically look at who I am, what I stand for, and what I want to do 5 to 10 years down the road. These then becomes my lamppost that guides me in the longer term while I'm looking at all the different kind of skill sets and strategies and goals that I'm implementing. So with these guiding posts, even if I come across challenges and obstacles, I always go back, reflect, and if I'm going through the right path and in alignment with what I believe in, that is what helps me stay happy and working towards being a successful individual as well. Thank you for taking your time to watch this particular video, and I hope that you have enjoyed what I've just shared. And I do hope that you do take the time to understand not only your character from a Bazi perspective, but do take the time to reflect on your values, what builds your character, because that will help you stay really motivated towards personal growth and success for happiness in the longer term. Thank you, and I'll see you next week. Goodbye.